Hello everyone. Welcome to Short Cheat Story. In today's video, we will tell you about one interesting and popular story. Enjoy watching. I remember every detail of that February day when my life as I knew it collapsed. It started out as an ordinary winter weekday. I had returned from a business trip the previous evening and was working from home while my wife Kathy was in the office. By that point, we had been married for over 3 years. Looking back, I can see the little cracks that had formed in our relationship over the last year or so as Kathy moved up the career ladder and I traveled more and more for work. But in my naivete, I hadn't noticed these signs at the time. As far as I knew, we were happy. Around noon, Kathy called and asked if I could pick up a few things for dinner to meet her after work. I readily agreed. It would give me a good excuse to get out of the home office for a while. I finished my work and headed out to run errands. As I was loading bags of groceries into the back seat of Kathy's car, my gaze stopped on a pink spot peeking out from under the passenger seat. Curious, I reached down to grab it. My stomach churned as I realized it was a lacy pink bra that definitely did not belong to my wife. In an instant, my view of marriage changed. Why would a stranger have underwear in my wife's car? Different options swirled in my mind, each more disturbing than the last. I was sickened by the uncertainty of it all. I shoved my bra back under the seat, deciding I couldn't look at it for another second. My hands shook as I slid into the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel tightly. What am I supposed to do now? Confront Katie as soon as she got home? Stay calm until I got more information? A million conflicting thoughts raced through my head. I drove aimlessly around the city for a while, trying to make sense of it all. When I got home, I started putting away groceries, hoping it would distract me. But I couldn't disconnect from my thoughts. When Katie walked into the house that evening, I searched her face for any sign of guilt. But she seemed perfectly calm, chatting about this and that, tapping her heels. My heart sank as I looked at her. This woman I thought I knew so well. I felt completely detached from the mundane domestic scene that had played out between us. We dined, maintaining only a semblance of normalcy. I could barely taste the food. Instead, I choked on it in my plate. The bra hovered over the scene like a ghost. I knew I couldn't think about anything else until I dealt with it. As we cleaned up after the meal, I gently asked Kathy if she knew how the bra ended up in her car. She frowned slightly and then lightly said that one of her friends must have left it behind when she dropped it off. I looked at her face, but it had a mask of innocent confusion on it. I left the question unanswered, realizing I would gain nothing by demanding an answer when she was so skillfully playing the part of the perplexed wife. But my gut told me that something sinister lurked beneath the surface. For the next week, I withdrew into myself, watching Katie's movements closely to make sure I didn't miss any cracks in her facade. But she gave nothing away, going about her usual business. My brain was hard at work, analyzing our every interaction, looking for clues I might have missed. I began to pay attention to the late nights at the office that had become a frequent occurrence for her. Katie had always been ambitious about her career, but the long hours and last-minute commutes now seemed suspicious through the lens of my new suspicions. When I cautiously tried to find out where she was actually spending all those late nights, she became defensive. She threw my own work trips in my face, accusing me of being jealous of her career success. The circular arguments went nowhere, but gave me even more determination to get to the truth. During that agonizing week of uncertainty, I began to surreptitiously search for evidence every time Kathy left the house. But always I found nothing. No incriminating texts or emails left open on her phone or laptop. No suspicious accounts on our bank statements. She was skillful at covering her tracks. 8 days after I found the bra, everything fell into place. Katie burst in on us after work on Friday night, looking stunning as always. I had prepared a romantic dinner for us, desperately hoping I was wrong about her. Maybe if I showed her how much I still loved her, she'd come back to me. But the gesture was in vain. Katie glanced at the table setting and an unreadable expression flashed across her face. She thanked me, but said she had meetings with coworkers scheduled for that evening. That excuse seemed petty to me. As she headed to the bedroom to get ready, I felt something inside me snap. I was tired of being a naive fool. I had to find out the truth once and for all, even if it ruined the fantasies I'd been clinging to. In a decisive moment, I grabbed my work phone off the counter and slipped it into her purse. Putting the phone in Katie's purse, I waited until the front door slammed behind her. As her car pulled out of the driveway, the numbness I'd felt for the past week turned to cold determination. Today, I would finally get answers, no matter what it cost me. I picked up my personal phone and opened the tracking app associated with my work device. I watched as the little dot representing Katie's car whizzed through the streets of our neighborhood and then pulled onto the highway. She drove for about 20 minutes before pulling out of the center of town. Of course, she was meeting her coworkers in the trendy bar district. Over the past 6 months, I've lost count of the number of times she's ditched me to go out for drinks with them. She'd always presented it as a necessary evil to get close to her superiors and advance her career. But now I saw that it was a transparent excuse. I continued to follow the tracking point to the Whitehall bar she frequented with her coworkers. Sure enough, she parked right outside it. My heart raced when I saw the dot come to a stop. She was no longer trying to hide her destination from me. I had to see it with my own eyes. I quickly changed into jeans and an unremarkable sweater and put a baseball cap on top. The last thing I wanted was for her to recognize me today. Grabbing my wallet and keys, I headed for the door, my hands shaking slightly from nerves. As I drove out of our suburban neighborhood, different possibilities ran through my mind. Maybe she was really just meeting a group from work. But my intuition told me otherwise. In the back of my mind, I knew this was it. Today was the day I would finally get concrete proof of her betrayal. I parked a block away from Whitehall and turned off my headlights, getting comfortable to watch the scene. All around me, groups of laughing young professionals strolled by, heading to various bars and clubs. But I hardly noticed the lively Friday night atmosphere, focusing on the Whitehall entrance. About 45 minutes after Katie arrived, I saw a small group emerge from the doors. Squinting through the shadows, I had no trouble picking her out. She had changed out of her work suit into a sexy black dress and heeled shoes. My breath caught as I saw the scene unfolding across the street. Katie looked radiant, with a carefree smile on her face, and her arm was casually wrapped around the elbow of a tall, handsome man I vaguely recognized from her office. As I watched their conversation and laughter, the man's hand rested on Kathy's lower back. She tilted her face toward him, her eyes glowing with love. That small, intimate gesture spoke volumes. This was not a friendly coworker. They walked together down the street to a nearby luxury hotel where I knew the executives of her firm stayed. My heart dropped as they walked through the gleaming front doors, still smitten with each other. There was no mistaking what was about to happen. Long after they disappeared inside, I just sat there, stunned by the darkness. Though I expected proof, some naive part of me still hoped I was wrong. But to deny what I had just witnessed was impossible. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. My wife was having an affair. Betrayal and anger overwhelmed me, and I slammed my palm on the steering wheel. How could she abandon our marriage like that? As I vented my rage inside the car, I realized that a turning point had come. The old life I had built with Kathy was now irrevocably gone. She had ruined it as soon as she crossed the threshold of the hotel room with her lover. The question now became, what next? I clearly couldn't go back to the house we shared tonight. Just the thought of lying next to Katie in our bed, knowing what she had just done, made me physically ill. Before I realized where I was going, I was outside the city limits. I just needed to get away and clear my head. The farther I got from the glittering city center, the more the vise on my chest loosened. Eventually, I saw the neon sign for a roadside dive bar called Duke's. On impulse, I pulled into the nearly empty parking lot. I didn't know what I hoped to find here, 30 miles out of town. But I needed a drink before facing whatever came next. As I walked through the weathered wooden door, I could taste the sour flavor of old beer and cigarettes. Behind the bar sat a few shabby regulars, sipping their drinks, and in the corner, classic rock was playing on the jukebox. The first rays of dawn glimmered over the mountains as I pulled up to the plot of land Ray had offered me for my use. Gravel crunched under my tires as I made my way down the rutted driveway to the clearing at the top of the hill that overlooked the property. Ray had already put the old travel trailer there, its metal sides gleaming in the pink morning light. I put the car in park and gazed silently at the wilderness spread out below. It was beautiful here, untouched forest as far as the eye could see. The remoteness of the place seemed symbolic, epitomizing the new lonely path my life had so unexpectedly chosen. It was just me and nature here. No painful reminders of betrayal around every corner or sympathy from well-meaning friends. I could just be, letting my wounds heal in quiet solitude. I opened the trailer door, and the musty smell of a room that had been closed for too long wafted over me. But after a quick look around the interior, I decided it was fine for my purposes. It was small, but not cramped. A bed, a tiny kitchenette, a bathroom, and a dining table by the window. Over the next few days, I began to organize the space, adding things I'd brought from home while Katie was at work. I took a perverse pleasure in buying new linens and towels, refusing to use anything she had touched during our previous life together. The physical work of settling into my new life occupied my thoughts. By the end of my first week at Ray's, I had scrubbed every surface, fixed a leaky faucet in the bathroom, and restocked the small propane-powered refrigerator. I still hadn't gotten over the painful emotional reaction to Kathy's betrayal. But here, in my new sanctuary, I could feel the vise on my chest loosening little by little. In the tranquility of the forest, I found a place to begin to heal. In my exile, I quickly fell into a familiar rhythm of life. Every morning I woke up with the sun and drank coffee on the pad in front of my trailer, watching the world around me come to life. The dawn chorus of birds never failed to lift my spirits. The days passed in solitary productivity, working remotely, tending the meager lot, walking the network of trails behind the tree line. I started running again for the first time in years, forcing myself to do more and more, as if I could physically overcome my inner turmoil. The grueling rhythm of my new lifestyle exhausted me, leaving little energy for reflection after the sun went down. Each evening I lay in my narrow bed with a sense of deep satisfaction from a productive day. For the first time in a long time, I felt in complete control of my life and choices. I enjoyed making decisions for myself alone, without regard for Kathy and her needs. Independence was empowering after I had compromised for so long to save our failing marriage. I was already settled habitually in my secluded hideaway in the mountains when I received a letter that turned my world upside down once again. It was short, just one line. "I need to see you. Can we talk?" My chest constricted at the sight of Katie's name in my inbox, after so many years had passed since then. I had no idea how she'd found my new contact information. Against my better judgment, I wrote back, agreeing to meet with her the following Saturday. The need to finish the conversation outweighed my desire to go unnoticed. The week flew by, and my anxiety grew as Saturday approached. When I arrived early in the morning at the coffee shop we'd agreed upon, my stomach was in knots. I chose a table by the window where I could watch her arrival, nervously jiggling my feet. Just in time, I saw Katie appear from around the corner, looking as gorgeous as she had when we were married. My breath caught involuntarily at the sight of her. Time had not dulled the power with which her beauty still had on me. I tensed as she walked through the door. Katie's face lit up when she spotted me, and the smile I had once loved so much spread across her face. She rushed toward me, and for a moment I thought she was going to hug me. But she stopped, kneading her arms awkwardly. We stared at each other for a few agonizing heartbeats before I gestured sharply to the empty chair across from me. As we waited for the coffee we'd ordered, tension hovered in the space between us. I was the first to break the silence, asking her directly what she wanted after all this time. Her words came out in a haphazard stream. She told me how she'd been looking for me for months, desperate to make things right. My breath caught at that confession, though my gaze remained cold and unmoving. Katie confessed how anguished she'd been after I left, realizing she'd ruined the best thing in her life. The depth of remorse was written all over her face as she confusedly apologized over and over, tears glistening in her eyes. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my eyes dry by an effort of will. I didn't want to show how deeply her words had shaken me after I'd worked so hard to rebuild my life alone. She had long ago lost the right to my heartache. When Katie finally ran out of words, a tremulous, fragile hope flickered in the space between us that I could somehow find a way to forgive her. But as I met her pleading gaze, I realized with complete clarity that such a reconciliation was now impossible. Too much damage had been done to bridge that gaping chasm of broken trust. I told her so in an even and impassive voice. When I made it clear that there was no second chance, Kathy seemed to shut down. By the time we parted, she looked small and defeated, but I didn't allow any sympathy to creep into her soul. After that, I drove aimlessly around town, my cluttered thoughts reflecting the storm clouds looming on the horizon. Facing the real flesh and blood woman I had once planned to spend my life with, rather than the shadowy notion of an ex-wife, had knocked me out more than I wanted to admit. By the time I drove the winding mountain roads home, a deep fatigue had settled in me. I had received closure from Kathy that I didn't even realize I had. I was finally able to close this chapter of my life, putting regrets and what if thoughts behind me forever.